Right, hello guys, and welcome back. It's no secret that update 9.1.5 has done wonders for the game sandbox. You know, warlocks are walking around with buddies doing double the damage they used to previously. Titans have some crazy stasis stuff going on, but what about hunters? You know, have hunters got anything in this update? You know, they got a few tweaks to the solar subclass with On Your Mark, a couple things to their stasis kit as well, but Strand. There was a very small change that happened to Strand that has actually made Strand Hunter a pretty decently powerful class, and it would be one of the best classes in the game if it didn't have a roaming super. So today, I want to show you a build that actually takes full advantage of all of the new changes that have happened to ensnaring slam, dear viewer. And rather than me just telling you what happened, let me just show you. You see all of these enemies here? Just take a look at the left-hand side of my screen after I do this. 20 seconds of woven mail, all for just suspending a group of enemies. 20 seconds. 20 seconds is crazy. And then, there you go, off they go. So, what exactly is going on here? Well, ensnaring slam got changed in update 9.1.5, a rather sort of under the radar change, and it states that suspending enemies with this ability grants you woven mail. Didn't used to do that, and of course, we all know that by now that activating your air move consumes your class ability energy and you dive to the ground, suspending enemies on impact. This has been, one of the most iconic Strand Hunter abilities ever since it came out in Lightfall. And it also got another change made to it. Previously, it used to increase the cooldown of your dodge, but now it doesn't do that anymore. So, yet another buff. And second of all, the ensnaring slam now also inherits the properties of your dodge and works with certain class ability mods like Reaper, Powerful Attraction, and so on, just like the Ascension changes. So if I show you here, if I get rid of my threaded spike and I don't catch it on purpose, and I use my gambler's dodge near these enemies, I'll get it right back. And also, it is going to allow me to get a kill here and make an orb. The other is because of one of our fragments, but, there you go. We make an orb. It works with Reaper as well, which is pretty cool. So that is essentially the basis of today's build, and we're also going to be combining it with this particular exotic here, the Speed Loader Slacks. Now, you could also go for Radiant Nulse Machines, but we'll talk about that. Speed Loader Slacks is going to be the main way that we're going to be looping our class ability back to back to back, and you'll be seeing it throughout the gameplay in the video. We're going to be getting these class abilities incredibly often, and basically having infinite uptime on Woven Mail. So that is basically the whole idea of today's build, and this actually, really took me by surprise. It is a very fun build, and, I can't wait to show you guys how to fully optimize it. So, without further ado, let's get into it, and if you enjoy today's content, then a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. On to the subclass. Of course, we are locked to the Silk Strike super. Not bad, though. Silk Strike is one of the best supers in the game. Then, for the base abilities, we are, of course, going to be taking Gambler's Dodge, because this will make it so whenever we use our dive near enemies, which we will always be doing, it will always give our melee back. So, we don't actually have to worry about investing too heavily into the melee stats because of this, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Then we have the Threaded Spike, and I've just gone for the Grapple Grenade because, Strand Hunter is pretty iconic. Then, of course, the aspects we have Ensnaring Slam and Threaded Spectre. The reason we are taking Threaded Spectre as our second aspect is because it is very good for survivability, obviously, because it creates the Strand clone, and it does work with the Dive Bomb. As you can see here, if I dive to the ground, it makes a Threaded Spectre, which way back in the past, this didn't happen, but thankfully, now it does. And this is just going to act as like a pseudo-amplified, making the enemies that we are fighting distracted while we are fighting them, which is pretty nice. Furthermore, Threaded Spectre also received a buff in update 9.1.5, where now it gives 3 fragment slots as opposed to the previous 2. So this is going to allow us to have 5 in total if we take Ensnaring Slam and Threaded Spectre together. This is actually the first time that Strand Hunter has access to 5 fragments, which is pretty cool. I do like how Bungie have been giving more attention to the non-prismatic subclasses, letting them use upwards of 4 fragment slots, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that is why we are taking Threaded Spectre, mainly just for survivability. Both of these aspects are essentially very survivability oriented. You get Woven Mail from this one, you get enemy distraction from this one, and you also sever with your Threaded Spike, remember. So, okay, so fragments. The first one we are taking is Thread of Binding. You don't really see this terribly often on Strand builds because it doesn't really do much here. However, it states that super final blows emit a suspending burst from the target. Now, the reason we are taking this is also because, yeah, that's kind of nice. We are going to be getting our super very often with the mods that we are going to be using, plus, having decent super stats, and it also gives plus 10 health. Now, in a build like Strand Hunter, yes, we are going to be getting lots of survivability from Threaded Spectre and Ensnaring Slam. However, it is going to be nice to have a lot of health stat, which is actually what I am going to recommend you take, because we don't have many sources of healing outside of that, so we have to use our weapons and our stats to kind of get as much healing as possible, just because of how naturally squishier and less healing options the Strand Hunter has. So, Thread of Binding, definitely need to take this. Then for number 2, we have have Thread of Generation. This one is the classic. It says dealing damage generates grenade energy, and it just takes away 10 grenade, which, you know, we just want this because we want to get our grapple back faster. Very, you know, standard Strand fragment. Then we have Thread of Wisdom. This will make it so defeating suspended targets creates an orb of power. So if we take Thread of Wisdom, which by the way is on a 10-second cooldown, you can't make orbs indefinitely. Pretty sure you could when Lifefall came out, but I think they changed that. And then if we also have Reaper on the class item, when we suspend a single enemy and then defeat them with a weapon, it'll make 2 orbs, which is pretty nice. And then both of those will give us, you know, a decent amount of healing, especially if we have good investment into the health stat. So that's just a good way of getting orbs, getting health back. And it is on a 10-second cooldown, but, you know, it's not terribly noticeable. Then carrying on, we have Thread of Mind. This one says that defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. And, well, our class ability suspends targets, and we want to be getting it back over and over. So this fragment is 100% essential. You must take this. I believe it's around 25% energy per red bar defeated, or orange bars. I think they give more. In fact, we can just test it right here. Suspend these enemies here. We'll defeat one of them. Gives a decent chunk back, another one here, and then we basically have our class ability back once again, and we can just continue the loop. So that's essentially what allows you to spam the ability so much. It does depend on enemy rank, but yeah, that's basically it. It's going to allow us to get the ability back very quickly. Lastly, the 5th and final fragment is going to be Thread of Continuity. This will make it so suspend, unravel, and sever effects applied to targets have increased duration. So for us, this will be suspend and sever as well, I guess, from the threaded spike, but this will actually make our suspend last 2 seconds longer on basically most rank and file combatants, so just a longer suspend, better crowd control. What more could you ask for? So now let's discuss why we are using Speedloader Slacks, or basically what our exotic of choice for the build is. So Speedloader Slacks has the perk Tight Fit. It states that dodging instantly reloads all your weapons and grants increased reload and handling to you and nearby allies. While the buff is active, additional dodges increase the buff strength and refresh the timer, maxing out at 5 stacks. Dealing sustained damage grants class ability energy. Now, the funny thing about this is that the entire first 80% of the perk actually doesn't work with Ensnaring Slam. So you might be asking, why are we using this? Well, it's because of the last part. Dealing sustained damage grants class ability energy. So if I just use my class ability and I just start dealing damage to these legionaries here, you'll see that my class ability just starts kind of randomly chunking here and there. And it's to do with a certain damage requirement. So you just need to do like a certain amount of damage, and then it'll give you the energy back. But that's essentially why we're taking that, because it kind of doubles up with our fragments and stuff to give us even more class ability. In fact, I'll show you just, you know, I'll keep carrying on the example here. You can see it kind of chunking up as I'm dealing damage, and then I'll just kind of get rid of it again. We'll try with a rocket pulse here just to see if it's based on different damage amounts. I feel like, you know, it is better with an SMG. Yeah, definitely better with an SMG, so keep that in mind. It's actually the first time that I'm finding that out. So yeah, use your SMG to generate your ability back. But the point is, it does work with all weapons. You could swap this for Radiant Dance Machines, which does do a similar thing. However, this is just for primary ammo weapons. So you can't use like your Mint Retrograde, for example, to charge back your dodge. It has to be primary weapons, which I suppose is all right. On orange bars, it should give me my whole dodge back, or close to it. There we go. Yeah. So it's kind of up to you, pick your poison. In all of the gameplay you're seeing in this video, I am using Speedloader Slacks, but you could also just as easily go with Radiant Dance Machines, just whichever you prefer. If you like using primary weapons more, go with RDMs. If you like to be a little bit more versatile, go with Speedloader Slacks. After that, I do want to discuss stats. And obviously, because this is a class ability based build, you are going to want to invest pretty heavily into your class stat. I have experimented with going over 100 class to get an overshield when you use your dive bomb. And in fact, I think it should give me a small overshield. Yeah, because I have 103. As you can see, it gives me a very small overshield, but you know, it doesn't last terribly long. So I don't think going over 100 class is terribly necessary. Just make sure you have at least 100, or at the minimum 100, so that, you know, you can get your class ability back the fastest from all sources like slacks, your fragments, and so on. Then after that, I've gone for 100 super, so that I get my super back very quickly when using my dive bomb, any source that generates super. After that, I have 79 melee, but this is not very optimal, by the way. I would actually just recommend having 50, because if you have 50, I'll just put this piece on here, which gives me to 54 melee. I'll just show you here again. We have 54. What this is going to mean is that there was a previous change where Bungie made it so if you use your dodge near enemies, it gives you double the melee energy. So that basically means you just need 50, because that's then going to double it. In fact, I'll just show you here. then boom, with 54 melee, I get my threaded spike back. So no more than 50 melee, just don't bother. After that, go for as much health as possible. I've gone for 90, 100 is the sort of max that you should be going, but this is just a survivability tool. As you can see, with 90 health, I get 63 HP whenever I collect an orb. So for defeating a single suspended target, it's going to make 2 orbs, so I'll get, around 126 health, which is pretty nice. And then I've also gone for a recuperation on the boots to get even more, but we can talk about that in the mods section. So basically, priorities are class, super, and health. Melee can only be maximum 50, no need to go any higher, and then weapons, also don't care about weapons. Speaking of weapons though, let's just take a look. I've gone for a Mint Retrograde, a Yeartide Apex with Heal Clip and Chaos Reshaped, though you could also go for a Mida Mini Tool with Heal Clip. I like having a Heal Clip weapon, again, because this build doesn't have too many sources of healing, so it is just nice to have that little bit of extra healing to help you out. Then I've also gone for Tractor Cannon, because while this build does excel at crowd control, it is lacking a little bit in the damage department. That's why we have Mint and Tractor to increase the damage we deal to enemies, buff up the damage of Mint. It's just quite nice. You can kind of use whatever you want here. Just try and make sure you have a heal clip weapon, and then you should be totally okay. So, artifact-wise, we actually do have quite a few important mods because there are a lot of Strand mods in this season's artifact. And then starting in column 2, the first one we have is Tightly Woven. This one states that while Woven Mail is active, you gain increased class ability and grenade stats. And actually, it's going to be plus 20 for both. So if you take a look at my stats, I have 43 here. So whenever I have Woven Mail, that's actually going to be 63. And then for class, it'll be 123. So again, I'll just show you an example of how much overshield I get with 103 class, which is what I have currently. So I'll have it zoomed in. It's a very, very small amount. But if I go to get Woven Mail, okay, then we should go like this. Got 20 seconds of Woven Mail. And then I'll defeat these enemies to get my dodge back. Now that I have my dodge back and I have Woven Mail, if I use it again, I get slightly more overshield, as you can see there. So that is because of the Tightly Woven perk. It is working, just to show you the sort of visual difference. That's why we have that, just a stat boost. Then I've also gone for Threadling Proliferation in column 2. This one states that dealing Strand weapon damage has the chance to spawn a Threadling. Defeating a Strand debuff target increases this chance. Just a way of this build accessing Threadlings. Just a nice extra perk to have. You'll probably see it in the background gameplay. Moving into column 3, we have Refresh Threads. This one states that picking up an elemental pickup matching your subclass element or picking up a tangle while you have a Strand super equipped grants energy to your least charged ability. So this basically means collect a tangle and get some energy to your dodge or your grenade, whatever. Just a little extra helper. Then Pack Tactics. This one says that dealing damage with Threadlings increases Threadling damage at maximum stacks. Threadlings stun unstoppable champions, which again, just an extra boost to our little green army. Just a little boost to our Threadlings. Moving into column 4, we have Threaded Blast. Destroying a tangle with Strand damage increases the radius of the explosion and its damage, which is very likely to happen because we are on a Strand build dealing lots of Strand elemental things going on, so might as well have this. Cauterized Darkness as well, I have this because it states that stasis or Strand debuff non-boss combatants take increased solar damage from all sources. And if we are using a solar primary like Yeartide Apex, this just means that whenever we suspend any red bars with Ensnaring Slam, it's going to be doing more damage because of Cauterized Darkness. In fact, I believe Cauterized Darkness is around a 30% damage increase, which is pretty nice. Again, might as well have this. Then lastly, I have Elemental Overdrive to make it so picking up an elemental pickup or tangle grants increased damage to weapons of the same element. So Mint Retrograde. Then finally, Tangled Web. Creating a tangle by defeating a Strand debuff target suspends nearby combatants. Even more suspend for the Suspend Spam build. So fits very nicely. Also, I forgot to mention, for archetypes of armor, I actually haven't grinded my hunter a lot this season, but I will show you. I have a Paragon here with a tertiary stat in health. I also have a Paragon again with a tertiary stat in health, then a Specialist with a tertiary stat in grenade. My Speedloader Slacks is Paragon with tertiary in health, then my Cloak is also a Specialist with a tertiary stat in grenade. So altogether they give me some pretty decent stats for survivability and spamming abilities. Armor set bonuses, I do have the 2-piece ion adapter, which will make it so whenever I get kills with my rocket pulse, it gives me a 20% splash DR, just a very solid perk. Honestly, when it comes to recommending set bonuses for builds these days, just go with 2-piece smoke jumper and 2-piece ion adapter. Unless your build is like hyper specific, like with a tech set kinetic sort of build, you really don't need anything else. Just 2-piece smoke, 2-piece ion is gonna carry you in most endgame content, for many, many months to come. So just keep that in mind. Lastly, we're gonna be finishing up with our armor mods, and for the helmet, we're actually taking 2 copies of Dynamo. And what that's gonna do is allow allow us to get a very good amount of super energy when we use our dive near targets. In fact, what I'll do here is I'll just get rid of my super and I will show you how much ability energy we actually get. Okay, yeah, so I've got all of the enemies bunched up here, and just take a look at my super bar and how much I'm going to get back for using Dynamo here. It's a pretty decent chunk, and with how often that we are going to be getting our dive back, it is going to really improve the rate at which we gain our Silk Strike back. So having 2 dynamos is really going to help with spamming our super. And then moving on to the gloves, we have 1 heavy-handed. I just have a solar loader to improve the feel of my SMG, then focusing strike to make it so you get class ability energy when you deal damage with a powered melee attack. Chest piece I have charged up, concussive dampener, and any resist mod of your choice. Then for the boots, we have stacks on stacks, recuperation for more health on all pickup, Strand scavenger to give more ammo to mint retrograde. Then finally, for the class item, I've actually gone for a utility kickstart. Now, the reason we have this is because when we get lots of armor charge, which we will from defeating a single suspended enemy, we get 4 armor charge, remember, because we get 2 orbs and then they're doubled because of stacks on stacks. Having utility kickstart on will give us just a small chunk of energy as soon as we use our dodge, so it's just going to allow us to get to our next one faster, which is pretty nice. Then Reaper, so that killing said suspended enemy also gives us the orb, and then powerful attraction to collect any orbs that we forgot to, because this also works with ensnaring slam now, by the way. So as far as the optimal gameplay loop is concerned, literally just run around, suspend as many enemies as you can, making sure to wait until enemies are bunched up enough so that you can get a good amount of woven mail off your suspend, because it does scale with how many enemies you suspend. The maximum is 5. 5 enemies suspended will give you 20 seconds of woven mail. In fact, 1 enemy is worth 4 seconds, so that's basically all you need to keep in mind. And then yeah, just use your SMG, use your mint, use your tractor to start killing things. You'll then get your supercharged very quickly, and then just use that to clear waves of enemies over and over again. If you're the type of player who plays all 3 classes and you want a break from, say, the Warlock Buddies or the Stasis Titan, I would very much recommend trying this build because it is very fun. It actually got me to hop on Hunter for the first time in quite a while, and that doesn't really happen a lot these days. So I wanted to put this build video out to show you guys that yes, this is very fun right now, and I definitely recommend giving it a try. As always, there will be a dim link at the top of the description for you to copy the build hassle-free, and here is also the fashion I used. Not terribly inspired, but I thought it looked pretty cool, so you can copy that as well if you want to. And if you enjoyed the video, then please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Working on a very big Portal video soon that I'm very excited to put out, so definitely stay tuned to the channel there. But until then, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.